So finally, we're going to talk about the benefits of backwards planning, and I'm going to show you just a couple of examples so you can kind of see what this looks like laid out. So when we think about lesson design, there are some common issues among music ensemble programs that we see designing lesson plans. Generally, we either have a coverage model or coverage focused teaching or activity focused teaching in the music classroom. Coverage focused teaching is where you're kind of checking off a list. I taught D major scale this year. I taught C major scale this year. Okay, done. And so you're just teaching information to kind of get towards an arbitrary goal. Or, okay, I taught page 15 in the method book, 16. So, you're teaching to check off the method book. That's called coverage focused teaching versus activity focused teaching. They call it hands on without minds on, meaning it's engaging and fun, but it's not always rooted in intellectual achievement. So, for example, you do a fun activity with your students, but it doesn't link back to really what they should be learning. Now, there's definitely a place for both of these things. Sometimes we need to check things off. Sometimes we just need some fun activities. This year I was trying to just re-engage the students, and so we did a lot of chicken rhythms. Now, that was linking back to what we were doing for sure, but it was a little silly and a little bit activity focused. So, but it was what they needed at that moment. So, not to say that these are like problems, but these just tend to be traditional methods that we see in the music classroom. We want to look at maybe doing more planning using understanding by design, because it's creating that deeper musical understanding for students so that they can apply it to the next thing. So sometimes when we move away from just focusing on, okay, we learned this fun piece of music, yay, or okay, we checked off this list, yay, when we really think about teaching by the set of skills or teaching towards mastery of a skill set or mastery of an activity or mastery of a certain parameter, then you're really helping students develop and work towards independence on their instrument. So some of the benefits we see using backwards planning in the regular classroom or the music classroom, it definitely helps with students who like to ask questions like, why are we doing this assignment? Or what's the purpose? Or will I ever use this again? With backwards planning, we can really plan a little more carefully, a little bit more intentionally, and make sure that our assignments and activities we do are really rooted in useful and meaningful experiences. Doesn't mean students won't ask these things, but you may have a little clearer answer for when they do. Now, there's some interesting research that shows that teachers who use understanding by design as their way to organize their coursework or outperform teachers using the more traditional approach. So the research showed that these teachers had better content knowledge. Didn't mean that they were smarter, it just means they had delved into their content maybe a little differently. They linked their content to other disciplines better. Now, we know in music, that's huge for what we do. We make many connections back from the arts to other subjects, but teachers using understanding by design were actually able to do that better. They developed plans that reflected research on pedagogical practices, meaning they use those best practices that we know really help students retain and be able to get that deeper understanding in their lesson plans. They use those strategies more often and better. They set clearer and more suitable goals for their students. So sometimes it's easy for me, especially in big classes, to be like, all right, violas, that was pretty good. So maybe it was good for 8 of the violas, but there's 4 of them that it was not good for. Well, really helping students set goals that are clearer and more specific for each student, because you have more individual data or you have clearer data on the students. So that's part of the benefit too of understanding by design. They also developed better plans that linked learning activities and teaching resources back to instructional goals. So, meaning that they didn't have a lot of fluff activities in their teaching or filler activities, but everything really feels purposeful in lesson planning when you're working back towards what's your end goal. And finally, it recognized students' skill levels and approaches to learning better. They had a better idea of where students were in their learning and where they were heading, as well as what their particular learning style was. You learn pretty quickly looking at student data like this, what students are good at and what they're not good at. So Another benefit of backwards planning is you're really working towards mastery of skills that can be transferred. We want students to play great concert music, and that's an important part of what we do. But if they can't pick up the next piece of music and at least transfer some of those skills, then we've missed a step. And I think many of us have that experience at times that we'll teach a piece or we'll teach a set of pieces and be done with it, get to start the next set of concert music, and it's like, wait, I just taught the C sharp. How come none of the cellos are doing this extension again? So, clearly there's a gap there. And so it closes some of those gaps when we plan like this. In addition, it helps us to focus on what are the most important parts of our curriculum. What are those key components? Not to say that every part of our curriculum is not important, but I think we know that there are certain things that students have to be able to do in order to be successful. So it helps us highlight those. And finally, we're leading to that deeper understanding and transfer of knowledge to create a better music student that they can apply for the lifetime of being able to play their instrument. So here's some examples of what this looks like on paper. You can see, this is an example from a district that I took offline. You're going to see some established goals there that they're trying to develop. So there they've set their goals, what their big, broad goals are. Okay, so you can kind of look at, listen to music with understanding, make value judgments about music. Whew. So you can kind of look through those. And then you'll see students will be able to independently use their learning too. So this is, what will the students be able to do? Okay, how will they take that knowledge to be able to develop a lifelong appreciation with music and the arts? Okay, then understandings. This is where you get those enduring understandings. Students will understand that. Okay, let's look at number 4. Music comes in various styles and forms. Okay, so that's your enduring understanding. Then that relates over to the essential questions that are created to go with that. Okay, and then you can see their knowledge here is students will know. So what will they know? Okay, you can look at all the different ways that they've broken down what they will know. And then what are those actual skills? So this is where it correlates back to the standards. So you can see how it links there. Okay, so this is kind of laid out. You can look online and see tons of different things about how different districts use this and the different formats available. But in general, it follows this format of goals, then their transfer, then they have their understanding, which goes along with their essential questions, what they will know, and then what they will do. And this really helps lay out really a good pathway for understanding by design. So here's some references that I use for this. I was not super familiar with understanding by design. I learned a little bit about it before, but not enough to really feel super confident. So I did a lot of research and I really enjoyed using some of these resources, especially Jay McTighe, his website there. Obviously, he's one of the original authors, as well as James Jensen down there. He had some great information about understanding by design in the ensemble classroom. So just some good opportunities to look at some other resources. I'm really interested to hear from all of you and hear if you're using this method in your school. This is not a method that has been brought up in our district yet, but I think in some districts it's already part of what they do. Or maybe some of you that have gone through graduate programs or undergraduate programs more recently will have experience with this. I would love to hear your input in our discussion post and hear what you're doing with understanding by design. So hopefully we'll hear from you and hopefully you're having a good rest of your school year.